Looking back, I can see the thread that weaves itself through my life and led me to connect with my spirit guides and become a spirit guide medium. When I was born, my Colombian birth mother was only 16 years old. After a year of struggling to provide for me, she gave me up for adoption. Foster parents took care of me for a few months before my Dutch parents adopted me and raised me in Germany. As is true for many adoptees, especially for cross-cultural ones, not knowing where I'd come from caused me to develop identity issues. Despite having a loving family, something seemed to be missing from my life because of my unknown past. Even though I tried, it was hard to focus on the future and figure out what I wanted to do with my life without knowing more about my roots. Nowadays, I know there's also a positive side to having a flexible identity, and it can even be a blessing. Letting go of our rigid perception of self, including our expectations and fears, is the biggest hurdle for most of us when it comes to spirit guide communication. However, as a young person, I hadn't developed that wisdom yet. I was one of the lucky ones. Not all adoptees are. My parents are the best, and they love me and support me 100% in all I do. Still, growing up in a Dutch family in small-town Germany during the 1980s was sometimes tough. On the outside, I had an ideal upbringing. On the inside, I had many insecurities. One reason for them was that I had no role models who looked like me, neither among my family members, nor the local community, nor the media. In fact, I was one of only 3 children of colour in my entire school. I hated my looks and thought I was ugly, even though people told me otherwise all the time. My insecurities also stemmed from indirect and even open racism. One early winter's evening when I was 12 years old, just as it was getting dark, I was waiting for my mother to pick me up after an afternoon activity, when a man rounded the corner and threatened to kill me if I didn't go back where I came from. I'm sure you can imagine how scary, confusing, and hurtful that was. That same year, I also had a spiritual experience that made a huge impact on me and shows how, bit by bit, my spiritual awareness grew. My parents took my brother and me on a trip to the United States. The minute the plane touched down on the landing strip, I knew I was home, even though I'd never been there before and couldn't explain this odd sensation. Subtle and inexplicable spiritual experiences like this would happen throughout my childhood and teens. I remember walking through the woods as a 17-year-old, following my intuition down a path that took me off the trail and through some bushes and ended overlooking a meadow. I stopped, and the air thickened and energized around me. A sensation of peace and sacredness settled in my heart, and I took a few deep breaths. I didn't understand what was happening, but felt blessed and peaceful. As a university student, I was still struggling with insecurities and sometimes full-blown depression. I was desperately searching for meaning, purpose, and my place in the world. At this low point, my spirit guides decided that I was ready for them to enter my life. Without realizing that they were behind it, I became obsessed with finding out more about my indigenous ancestry. After doing lots of research online, I found out there were about 100 different indigenous communities in Colombia. My next discovery showed that I was likely of Emberá descent. This indigenous community lives in the rainforests and the western valleys of the Andes on the west coast of Colombia. They've preserved much of their traditional language and many of their customs and spiritual traditions, even in the face of being caught in the middle of the fights between the government, the guerrillas, and the paramilitary groups in their area. I developed a deep desire to connect with my ancestors on a spiritual level, and the more I dug into this topic, the more signs, symbols, and synchronicities showed up in my life. It all culminated in that fateful night when my ancestral guide appeared in my bedroom in full physical form, as described earlier. After this incident, my life changed forever. Something had shifted inside me. For the first time, I symbolically sensed solid ground under my feet. It didn't matter that I couldn't remember my birth mother and father. I now felt connected with and supported by my ancestors on a spiritual level. This enabled me to learn that everything I'd perceived as negative and shameful about myself was in reality a gift. Once used to help others, that gift would bring enormous blessings into my life. Everyone has their own insecurities to cope with, and yours will be different from mine. However, whatever they may be, it's time to deal with them so you can shine your light for the world. Are you ready to meet your spirit guides so they can help heal those issues? If you are, they can also assist you in developing your spiritual abilities, finding inner peace, and succeeding in life. The fact that you've picked up this book tells me something important about you. It shows me you're a light worker, someone who's meant to make this world a better place for all by shining your light as brightly as possible. Shining your light means using the innate skills, talents, and gifts you came here to share with the rest of us. If you don't like the term light worker, use something that's more to your liking. The point is your soul came here with a mission, and you need to follow that calling to feel happy and fulfilled. As you're reading this book, you're not just a light worker, but also a spirit worker. This means part of your destiny is to collaborate with the spirit world. Not necessarily in a professional sense as a shaman, medium, witch, or priestess, unless you feel called to do so. However, it's essential that you keep the channel to your spirit guides open so they can advise you throughout your life. Your cosmic team. So, you have a mission to fulfill in this lifetime, but you don't have to do it on your own. You're part of a cosmic team. This team is comprised of several spirit guides of different types. Each has their own special way of helping you fulfill your soul's task. Such a cosmic team has at least 3 permanent members and some specialists who join for a limited time to accomplish certain tasks. Then they leave to assist someone else. Everyone has at least 1 ancestor guide and 1 angel on their team. Who the others are depends on your past experiences as a soul and what you came here to do. Ancestor spirits, for example, help you create loving relationships in your life, while deities concern themselves more with the legacy you leave behind. Your core team of heavenly helpers are the ones who stay with you your entire life. They're well aware of the soul contract you agreed to before you embarked on your trip to Earth. Their job is to help you unlock, unearth, and polish those parts of your soul that will have a positive impact on your own and other people's lives. They have the information you need to recognize your specific skills and talents, and how to use them to make this world a more egalitarian, inclusive, and collaborative place. I realize that you might think you're not special enough to have a team of spirit guides. Well, I don't agree. Why else would you be interested in spiritual topics and spirit guides in particular? It's your soul guiding you to the things that are meaningful to you and that will further your spiritual growth. Your interests, hobbies, and desires always show you the way to fulfilling your soul's mission. Therefore, your wish to connect with your guides shows you're a soul who didn't just incarnate for your own pleasure and growth, but to raise the vibration of the planet. You do that by sharing your skills, gifts, and talents with the world. Your spirit guides are essential to that process, and on a deep soul level, you know that. Your life purpose is in fact part of a bigger mission that you and your guides are working on together. That's why it's vital for you to learn to connect and communicate with your team of heavenly helpers. Still have doubts? That's your ego trying to tell you, I can't possibly be talking about you. Well, I'm here to tell you that you don't need to be better looking, younger, richer, more educated, a perfect parent, or meditate every day before you can make a difference. You can be a light worker and a spirit worker right now. You already are. Whatever insecurities are holding you back, they're in no way a sign that you don't have a spirit guide team and a mission to accomplish. In fact, your insecurities may be your secret weapon. Once transformed, they can become your strongest asset. We'll talk about that more later in this chapter. For now, I want you to know that your cosmic team is waiting for you. They want you to acknowledge their existence and work with them so they can help you fulfill your life's purpose by living with purpose every single day. I found that connecting with my spirit guides was the key to turning my life around. I discovered my gifts and started sharing them, fulfilling my mission and finding my place in the world. The same can happen for you. You're listening to this book now, That shows me you're almost ready. Ready to take the next step on your spiritual journey. Ready to step up and let your light shine, which is what lies in the core of your earthly mission. This might take a different form for every one of us. We all need to find our individual expression, but letting our light shine is what it's all about. Unhealed wounds in our heart may be preventing us from living our full potential and shining our light. But our cosmic team can help us heal those wounds. Right underneath them lies the solution. The skills, talents, and gifts that will help us fulfill our mission. Are you ready to discover yours? But first, let's look at why you haven't managed to connect with your spirit guides yet. Contacting your team. Why it's so hard to connect with our spirit guides. If you're like most of my students, you've already tried connecting with your heavenly helpers. There are many meditations on the internet that promise to help you do so. However, since you're listening to this book, you might not have succeeded. Why is it so many people fail? Here is the secret. It's not that our guides aren't there or don't want to answer our questions. In fact, they communicate with us all the time. The fault doesn't lie with them, but with us. We often stand in our own way. Here are 4 main ways we block ourselves from getting the cosmic support we need. Reason number 1. Our Western mindset gets in the way. Many values of Western society dominate the world at this moment in history and influence our daily lives, whether we live in the West or not. One of these values is what I call scientific rationality. It's the distinguishing mark of modern science. All of us are exposed to it every single day, even if we didn't study any of the exact sciences. It states that only what is perceivable with the 5 physical senses, that is measurable and repeatable, is real, and everything else isn't. And spiritual experiences do not always fall into this category. For this reason, our rational mind has learnt to view them as suspicious, imaginary, and discardable. If you've ever done a guided meditation to connect with your guides, the following example might ring true for you. Let's assume you're trying to find your spirit guide's name during this meditation. With your mind's eye, you see an image of a rose. Your intuition knows that this is a message from your guide telling you that their name is Rose. Your rational mind, however, wants proof. It questions everything to the point where you become confused and start doubting your intuition. Soon you're dismissing the answer you've got from your guide and telling yourself that the meditation didn't work. Sound familiar? Reason number 2. Our own expectations sabotage us. As humans, we assume that our cosmic helpers communicate in the same way we do, either through the spoken word or through other forms of sensory input coming from the outside world. This is a false assumption. Spirit guides have their own language, and just like we can't expect a French person to reply to us in Italian, we need to adjust our expectations and learn their language. So don't expect a booming voice from heaven to give you the answer to all your problems. In fact, you might never externally hear your guide's voice or see what they look like. Instead, their messages might come as an inner knowing, a memory, a vision, or a dream. They can also come as signs, symbols, synchronicities, sudden insights, or vague, intuitive feelings. These may not be what you were expecting, but they're just as valid as your guide appearing in front of you in full physical form. Not as spectacular, but the information transmitted can be just as relevant and life-changing. Reason number 3. We've never learnt the skills we need to communicate with our guides. Some people possess a natural gift for connecting with spirits. Everyone else needs to learn the basics. That doesn't mean they can never do it, but they have to learn how. Then practice. Even if you're born with this talent, you still need training. Super talented soccer players train almost every single day. Just like them, if you want to succeed, you have to be willing to invest the time and effort. Regular meditation is a must because it provides you with one-on-one time with your guides. Even if you don't see any progress right away, they'll be working hard to make the connection between you stronger every day. Other topics you need to learn about are psychic protection, raising your vibration, and the clairs, the inner sense we use to communicate with the spirit world. I'll cover all of these and more in the following chapters. Reason number 4. We doubt our experiences. Because mainstream culture regards spirit guides as figments of the imagination, we often doubt the experiences we have with them and therefore ourselves. We can combat this with regular practice. The more we communicate with our guides, the more confident we become that we aren't making things up. The more trust and confidence we build, the less time we spend doubting ourselves. Another way to build confidence is to find like-minded people who share our interest in spirit guides. Hearing about their experiences, fears, and successes gives us the validation that we're not alone. It reminds us that millions of people all around the globe have similar spiritual experiences and that we aren't crazy. It's also useful to look at cultures that have a long history of spirit guide communication. No one in those cultures and spiritual traditions would doubt that spirit guides were real and that we could talk to them and create alliances with them to create a better life for ourselves and others. Why should we doubt it? No special gifts needed. Something else that might be holding us back is the idea that we need to be a psychic, shaman, witch, priest, medium, healer, or other professional spirit worker to connect with our spirit guides. That's not true at all. These are just the people we hear about in this context, because they're the ones who have used their spirit guide connections to help others. An example is the famous 19th century voodoo priestess Marie Laveau from New Orleans. She's even said to have saved several men from the gallows with her charms and spells. Other spirit workers have led their people into battle against enemies who have tried to oppress their community, like the Native American leader, Sitting Bull, who had a vision that his people would win a major battle, which then happened in 1876. A very different and contemporary example would be Teresa Caputo, a medium from the USA. She's the star of her own TV show and teaches millions about life after death. But besides these famous examples, there are millions of unknown individuals around the globe who talk to their heavenly helpers daily. They're housewives, doctors, contractors, students, PR professionals, shopkeepers, farmers, lawyers, and more. They live their lives quietly and might not even tell their closest friends about their spiritual pursuits. But I know about them because I get emails from them every day in which they tell me their stories. So, you don't need to be a spirit worker to communicate with your spirit guides, and you don't need any special abilities either. It's great to possess the ability to predict the future, heal through Reiki, read someone's aura, and so on. But you don't need spiritual gifts to receive guidance from your cosmic helpers, or spiritual experiences. Have you had a near-death experience, traveled the astral world, or taken part in an ayahuasca ritual? If so, that's wonderful. But it's not a prerequisite for connecting with your guides. All you need is an open mind. Unfortunately, few of us have been taught that approach, even though it's so important. As we saw earlier, we can get in our own way and not even realize that we're doing it. We block ourselves through limiting beliefs, early childhood conditioning, and unrealistic expectations. We close ourselves off without realizing it, and therefore limit our potential. So let's first define what open-mindedness is before we look at how to achieve it. Keeping an open mind is the ability to be receptive to new ideas, concepts, and experiences without judging and rejecting them off the bat. Here are some tips to help you be open-minded as you listen on. Consider possibilities. If you read something that goes against what you believe to be true, consider the possibility there's more to reality than you assumed. Is it possible to expand your perspective to include both your pre-existing views and what you just read? Is there an overarching theme that incorporates both sets of information? Don't be afraid to ask questions. If you're having a hard time wrapping your brain around a concept or a detail I introduce in this book, come and find me on social media. Let's have a conversation about it. It gives others the chance to chime in and allows all of us to walk away a little more enlightened than we were before. Try everything at least once. This is something I learnt from my parents in the context of food, and I'll always be grateful for the lesson. If you assume that something I suggest you try won't work for you, or scares you, or seems too crazy to attempt, do it anyway, at least once. Maybe even twice to make sure you give it a fair chance. No risk, no gain. If you get triggered or feel angry or frustrated, Take time out. This can happen when you don't achieve the results you want right away. If you're a perfectionist like me, you'll know what I'm talking about. I've had students burst into tears because they didn't succeed in connecting with their guides after trying it for the very first time. I'm sure you're already sick of hearing it, but spirit guide communication takes practice. So if you're feeling frustrated, be gentle and patient with yourself. Take a break and try again tomorrow. Assume nothing. This is especially important for those of us who have spent years walking the spiritual path, as we sometimes fall into the trap of thinking we know everything already. Of course, that's impossible. There's always a new skill to learn and a fresh perspective to consider. After every chapter of this book, ask yourself what was new to you and how you can incorporate it into your existing spiritual practice. If you apply these principles, you won't just benefit from listening to this book. You'll see your open mind having a positive effect on all areas of your life, from personal relationships to how you perform at work. Staying open-minded is also a great way to develop compassion, and we can never have enough of that in the world. That said, here's one last tip. Take what makes sense and leave the rest. If something doesn't work for you, discard it from your spiritual toolbox. You're the expert on your own life. You know best what serves you and what doesn't. Remember, you're good enough already. You have everything you need to start this journey. Close your eyes for a moment, take a deep breath, and say out loud, I am willing and able to connect with my spirit guides. I believe in you, and so should you. To support yourself on this journey, you can use the downloadable workbook. Listen to the bonuses chapter for the link that contains journaling prompts and serves as a place to reflect on what you read, take notes, and gather all the necessary information for your spirit guide ceremony in Chapter 12. Now you're ready. You now know that you're a light worker who is part of a cosmic team and came here to make this world a better place for all beings. You've also learned why you haven't succeeded in connecting with the spirit guide members of that team yet, and you understand that you don't need any special gifts or talents to communicate with your otherworldly team members, just an open mind. So now you're ready to dive in and get started.